So I'm starting up a new product today. I'm actually working with a client on it. And today is the day one planning process for a totally new product. And so I wanted to talk a bit about how I go about this planning process and some strategy that goes into it. I like to think of it like a slingshot. With a slingshot, you're aiming at your target, you're loading up energy, and then you let go and fire so that you can move fast toward your target, right? The same idea applies when planning out a new product. So, I think it's really important not to jump in straight away and start designing and coding and building out features as they come to you. You might even have a really clear concept in your mind, or whoever you're working with, you might be somewhat clear on what you intend to build. But if you don't take an extra day or a week or so to, really think clearly about the plan ahead, then you could get off track. You can get into these unforeseen delays, and it's no good. So I always like to try to separate the planning from the execution as much as possible. Now, of course, you're going to kind of readapt and course correct as you go forward in the project. But this separation of planning from execution, it's super important, and it goes a long, long way to being effective when, at least for me, when I'm executing and building out new products. The three main reasons why I try to actually separate the planning phase from the execution. Number one, this is how I ship on time. So whether you're working with a client, as I am in this case, or if I'm even building something, for, one of my own products, it's really, really important to ship this thing in a pretty timely fashion. And I always like to set some sort of like deadline or date in the calendar, whether it's for a client or for myself. I just want to know that like this V1 of this product is going to get into the hands of customers by roughly this date. And number two, we want to make sure that we're building the right thing and building it in the right way, right? So, it's really easy to get caught up and get into rabbit holes and redesign and rethink things. But if you take a little bit of time up front, you can really minimize the amount of building and then scrapping and then needing to build again and exploring many different directions. That's where the unforeseen delays start to stack up over the course of building out a V1 of a product. And then finally, by separating the planning from the execution, what I'm really trying to do here is I'm separating the decision work from the technical work, right? So as we go forward in the design and coding and building process, there's a lot of technical work that happens there. But there's also a lot of work and time and energy and mental cycles that go into making all sorts of decisions, from what we're building and who we're building it for, to the approach that we're taking on the architecture, to the design, to the functionality, the user experience, the interface, all of that. So there's a lot of little decisions that happen. Now, we're not going to get to every single tiny decision that we'll ever make throughout this project. We're not going to try to do all of that up front, but we are trying to offload as much of that up front, or front load as much of that as possible, so that we can actually at least have like some of like the high level decisions already made, and we can remove a lot of the guesswork as we go forward into the project. So that's kind of the slingshot mentality that I like to take with new products. Kind of loading up on all this energy and getting a lot of that decision work out of the way up front, so that I can just go and start building. So let me kind of boil this down into more of an actual like step-by-step process. This is somewhat, more or less what it looks like in most of my products that I work on. The first step is just figuring out, what are we solving for? Why are we building what we're building? Who are we building for? So if I'm working with a client, then this is a collaboration with the client on their market and their customer, and understanding, their customer's job to be done. If it's my own product, it's a very, very similar concept. I mean, really, so much is the same when I'm building one of my own products than when I'm collaborating with a client. So We're thinking about the job to be done. What is the customer's primary job to be done? That's a whole methodology that I really recommend that you get into. If you're not familiar with it, you can Google it. I'm also trying to really get a deep understanding of, okay, we're going to have customers using this product. What is the result that a customer is trying to achieve? What is a win for the customer every time they use this product? Why are they picking it up? What are they trying to accomplish? We want to always keep a really clear vision on what that is. Sometimes it's not exactly what happens when they click the button in your application. It's more about like, what is the outcome that clicking that button will drive for the customer's business or for the customer personally, right? And then sort of related to that, but maybe a little bit different, is like, what is the actual marketing message behind this product? Think about like when we're going to distribute this product through its marketing site, what might the headline say? What are we going to lead with in terms of the key benefit or the key pain point that this product is aimed at solving? That helps us focus in on where we should prioritize and what we're going to build and what we're going to include in the V1 scope. And that is the next step. So, all right, we have a clear idea on who we're building for, what the goal of the product is going to be. Now we start to literally make a list of what are the things that we're going to include in the version 1 of this product. And if you do this effectively, then you're also going to make a second list, which are things that you probably want to have in the product, that you'll probably expect will end up getting into the product, but they don't need to be in version 1. So shaping and kind of minimizing the scope of V1 is super important to get this product shipped and into the hands of first customers as soon as possible. So it's important to be thinking about both what's in V1 and what's probably coming down to V2. You don't need to lock in what's in V2 yet, but it's a good idea to know what's the general direction where you think this is going to be heading. All right, so we've got our list of a scope, and I'm going to show what this actually looks like in the current project that I'm planning this week here in just a minute. But the next step here is going to be, taking that kind of high-level list of what's going to go into the product and building it out into a roadmap. And this is where I start to break things out into what we think of as issues in like GitHub or cards if you're used to it, like a Kanban style like I am. Breaking each feature or each element of the product out into its own issue. And sometimes individual features will be broken out into multiple issues or cards, as I'll show you in just a second. We're going to include some light details in these issues or in these cards, if you will. But we don't have to get all the details. We don't have to get super into the weeds. What we're just trying to do is start that technical planning, decision-making process here up front. Okay, so we've got our list of cards, and then we get into building out the order of, like shifting things around so that we can decide, what are we going to build first, second, third, and what's the order of building these things. I usually make the ordering decision factoring in two different things at once. Number one is, what's most important for users. We don't necessarily need like all the back end bells and whistles that we might need on the admin side. Up front, what's more important is, can the user achieve their job to be done? Let's start with the features and functionality and user interface first, and then build out and round things out from there. But there's also technical considerations. Like sometimes you might have to build one feature before you're technically able to build another. So that comes into play here as well. Setting the weekly schedule, this is also really important. What I like to do is, all right, we've got our list of things. We've got them ordered in a rough roadmap sequence of things that we're going to build. Now I want to start to think about like that target date, when we want to have V1 ready to hand to first customers. That might be 2 months down the road. That might be 3, 4, 5 months down the road, depending on how complex the product is going to be. I want to take our list. I want to separate it into like 2 or 3 big items, and we'll map those out to weeks coming up. Now, of course, this is going to change shape and we're going to shift things around as we move forward. But I want to kind of map out 2 or 3 items per week so so that we can start to see, all right, how much progress are we going to be making 3 weeks from now? How about 6 weeks from now? Where roughly should we be in terms of our progress? This is more of a like a benchmark to track for myself and for my team if I'm working with a team on this one, to know, like, are we behind schedule? Are we ahead of schedule? And again, these will shift as we move forward. But I also always like to build in about 2 weeks near the end of the project, or maybe near the middle toward the end, of basically not adding anything into these weeks, because inevitably we're going to have some overflow. Some items are going to take longer than expected. We want to have that buffer ready. But we're also going to have a week where, like, okay, we've built some features, but now we just need to refine them. We need to dial them in a bit. Maybe we need to write some more test coverage for things. That's going to go into this like 2-week overflow period, if you will. And then finally, we just get to work, All right, let me show you what this actually looks like in the project that I'm actually getting into this week. This one happens to be for a client. So I'm going to show you, this is kind of a copy of the actual project proposal that I gave to the client. So if you're not working with a client, then you'll probably have some other planning document where you can literally list out what's going into that V1 scope. So I'm not going to get too far into like what this product is all about, but maybe in future videos I will. But here is like the list of super high level. It's not even in any very specific order. Just giving some details on what we are planning on including in the version 1 version of this thing. And in a couple cases, I'm starting to actually note, like, this is sort of related, but we're not going to build it in version 1. We're going to include it into version 2. And I'm also creating that second list. And in this case, I called it a post V1 roadmap. You might call it a V2 roadmap. This is the list of things that we think are probably going to be included, but they're not. They're not going to be in V1. We're specifically stating we're not building these things yet. It's not going to cost us time or delay our ship date on this product. But they're things that we have in the back of our mind. We're starting to think about. We might look out for customer requests around these areas. So we have some lists here as well. All right, so that's figuring out the scope, and then going back to my process, and then I start to build it into an actual board of issues. Now here I'm just doing this in Notion. Once I get into the technical building phase, I'll probably bring it into GitHub, and I also like to use Linear a lot. So again, this is not really where I'm going to track every single piece that I'm building, especially if I'm working with a team. But what I am using this for is the high-level project planning. So I like the Kanban view. I'm a big Kanban guy. I started out by just creating these cards. This is breaking up our V1 scope. Everything in here, I'm now bringing into like self-contained items that me or another developer can pick up and build and then move it along in the board, right? So each one of these has just a little bit of like very light detail, like really not all that much, just to, this is me starting to do some of that decision work up front before I actually get into the code. A little bit on some of the logic that we're going to build out for some of these features. Let's see. Here's a little bit more, really just 2, 3, 4 bullet points on each one. So I'm building out the plan. I'm sort of self-containing each one of these. My next step, of course, is to reorder these things. So I did a lot of work, kind of moving things around in the order here. And I put the in progress stuff for the stuff that I'm actually working on this week, like today and tomorrow. So these are some of the first items. And so I've got the order. And again, I'm basing that on, let's start with the things that the user needs to see first. And I'm also taking into consideration, like, in this case, there's a feature called contests, and then contests have links. So we want to build the contests model first, and then we get into the link. So there are some technical considerations that go into this. And then I like this timeline view. So I put start and end dates on every one. Now, it's not going to be exact. I'm not literally going to start it on this date and finish everything on that date. But I am just using like Monday to Friday so that I can map these things by week. So here's this current week, and then kind of moving into the future. I've got like 3 pieces next week, 3 pieces the week after. This one we've got 4 pieces after that. Then I'm actually going to be going on a trip that week, so the project will be on pause. And then here is that 2-week span that I talked about, where this is like the overflow week. So I'm expecting that things from these previous weeks are probably going to start to spill out into this area a little bit. But more likely, what that's going to look like is like I'll probably finish the features, but I need to refine them. Tweak the UX, the UI a little bit, dial things in. I'm going to be writing extra test coverage during this time, things like that. And then we get into, in this particular project, in addition to the app itself, I'm also going to be writing and designing a 1-page marketing site for this new product as well. So we're planning that out in like a 2-week sprint near the end of the project. So this is actually a relatively simple product. It's kind of like a free marketing product that'll be sort of a lead gen thing, and should be a relatively quick one, just a few weeks of development to get going from concept, which is where we're at today, to this one is going to take roughly 8 weeks or so to go from here to actually getting a version 1 in the hands of customers, and then we can follow on with some of these V2 items. By the way, last thing, I did push some of those V2 items into this hidden list over here called Future Roadmap. This is in no particular order. I'm just kind of chucking stuff in here so that we have it. In some cases, I did have some technical details that I have in mind for what might go into these V2 items, but we are definitely planning on not doing these in V1, so they might come into play in a future version. All right, so that is how I'm going about planning out this new product. So today I'm going to get into work and start firing things up, and I'm excited to get into it. This should be a fun one. See you next time.